Hi everyone and welcome to One Autistic Person. The video that I'm going to do today is kind of in line with a few others that I've done recently, and I want to sort of look at things from my perspective of the way the world is at the moment, and not just harp on about autistic traits and things like that, but how other things may, in the extended world, in society, may play a key part in that, but not necessarily automatically linking it to autism, but it will cover the fact that it is in relation to autism. And this is kind of on the back of doing the stuff around medical gaslighting. And yes, that was linked to autism within the video that I did, but it was also, it sort of covered everything, and it was covering the fact of how it's very, very difficult to deal with things. And the video that I'm going to do today is going to be about DEI, so diversity, equality and inclusion. And that's because they're obviously across the water, shall we say, there's been pretty much a decimation of DEI policy to a point of where it's now policy to not have a policy, and it's seen as a negative. And I wanted to look at how it really isn't a negative and why getting rid of policies like that are not good. And I do feel that the rhetoric is changing a little bit in this country. I'm not on social media a huge amount, but I do sort of dip in and out. And obviously on places like X, there's a lot of rhetoric around this, but I'm noticing it generally in the general conversation that people are having, that DEI is seen as bad, and all for the wrong reasons, and because it is completely misunderstood. So what I wanted to do is sort of look at it from my perspective, break it down. Again, this is always my opinion, but it's based on my experience within the workplace, as a manager who's had to deal with various different things that have come up in relation to DEI, and why it's important for everybody, including people who are autistic, people who are neurodivergent, and how this protects everybody in general. But I wanted to also make that point that it protects everyone, not just a subset of people. So I'm going to look at what DEI is. So I'm going to look at diversity, equality and inclusion separately. I'm also going to look at equity, which is something that comes on the back of understanding DEI. And for me, the recent move to some subsets of society to have issues with DEI is from a complete misunderstanding of what DEI policies are there for. It is not there to punish people who are discriminating against others. That is a welcome byproduct of it. It is about protecting people who are treated differently because of a protected characteristic, and ensuring that everyone, not just one group of people, has the same opportunities in life, regardless of those characteristics. Not given opportunity based on a given characteristic. So it's not about giving people with a specific characteristic more opportunity, it's just giving them equal opportunities to things. Protected characteristics are categorized as protected as they can be unconsciously used against people at work and also in life in general. So what I'm going to look at first is actually in the UK what the protected characteristics are. And I've not done these in any particular order. I've taken them directly from the government's website. I already knew what these were, but I wanted to do them in an order that was nothing to do with me putting them in what I would perceive as a biased way of saying this is more important. So I've just done them in that order, but then I'm going to sort of touch on who is actually covered by all of these things. So the first one is age, and I think everybody's aware we all have an age. Everybody is a certain amount of years and days and hours old. So an age, it's relevant to absolutely everybody. So it's really important to understand that it protects young people, it protects older people, and it protects people in the middle as well, because there are discriminations that can happen to people in the middle because of other life things that are happening with them in relation to that. You're more likely to have children, for instance, at a certain age. So it could be age discrimination to discriminate against somebody because of the fact they have children. That they need to care for. It could be age discrimination because of the fact you're trying to force someone into retirement, or it could be age discrimination because you're not willing to take on somebody under the age of 25 when there's no actual real reason to do so other than the fact you can't be bothered to train them. And so therefore it does protect absolutely everybody. So that's one where it's protected for everybody. Now, the next one that was on the government website was gender reassignment. And this, to me, it is so obvious that this is something that needs to be separated and be something that is protected from discrimination. And I think it's becoming more and more important. And I think this is a main point of why people are trying to push back on DEI, because I think people don't see people who are trans, people who have had gender reassignment, who do not identify as the sex they were assigned at birth. that they are problematic, and I don't know why. I don't understand why that they're seen as problematic, other than it doesn't fit a certain type of person that you would expect. It doesn't fit a mindset and a thought process around sex and gender. So it does need to be protected. But I think that is a big reason why we've got the rhetoric here. But it certainly was when it came to what happened over in America. Being married or in a civil partnership, this actually also covers if you're single as well. So you can't be discriminated against because you're single. So if somebody started bullying you because of the fact that you were not married, then that would mean that you would be protected in that situation. So that covers absolutely everybody. It covers everybody's relationship status pretty much. It specifically says being married or in a civil partnership, but actually the law allows for it to be used if you're single as well. So that protects absolutely everyone. Being pregnant or on maternity leave, again, this is outdated and really needs to be looked at, because actually the law protects being pregnant, on maternity leave, but also being on parental leave in general, any kind of parental leave, and those laws are just about to be tightened and be more wide-reaching. But it doesn't necessarily mean maternity leave, it means parental leave of any sort, which doesn't affect absolutely everybody, but it affects a big chunk of society, and certainly a big chunk of society of a certain age that are protected in that sort of in that way. So they're protected when if you're having children, then you can't be treated negatively because of the fact that you've had children. The next one is disability, and obviously this is something that I hold quite close to me, because this is something I faced. It's something that a lot of people who are autistic and a lot of people who are neurodivergent and other health conditions that I also have face quite often, and maybe didn't even realise they were facing it. My best friend's sort of going through a lot of searching and understanding himself at the moment, and he said that the other day he realised that he had experienced discrimination for the first time. He said I didn't really, but he said I don't think it was the first time. It's just the first time I was aware of the fact I was being discriminated against in a situation. And quite often it goes unnoticed, but once you start realising it, you actually start seeing it a lot more. The thing with this is this, again, does not cover absolutely everybody, but it could potentially cover absolutely everybody, because the disability discrimination side of things when it comes to the Equalities Act in the UK covers any condition that you have or are expected to have for over 12 months. So if it's chronic and even if it's not going to, even if it could potentially change at some point, if it's lasted for 12 months, you are definitely covered, and potentially if it was seen by your doctor as lasting for more than 12 months, that would mean that you would be protected in that situation. So it does cover a lot of people, and the thing I don't think people realise is the disability element of this can actually end up covering you when you really least expect it. So if you end up having an accident and you, I don't know, potentially lose the use of your legs for a period of time, and that period of time is going to be over 12 months, it actually would be covered as a disability under 12 months in that, because you were disabled in that time period. So it covers a lot of things, and I don't think people would realise that this was covering them until it was gone. So I think it's really problematic if it's no longer something that we can rely on. Race, including colour, nationality, ethnic or national origin. This covers everyone. This covers absolutely everybody. It can be problematic in relation to the law, as it has been recently in this country. And there was something that happened that I didn't necessarily overly agree with the verdict that was given, but I wasn't involved I wasn't part of the jury. But it was very clear that somebody had potentially had referred to somebody's race being white as a negative during a video that was taken of that person. The jury found that person not guilty. It was a very high profile case here because of the fact it's a female footballer that was being prosecuted for it. I think the point you have to understand is the fact that person was being prosecuted. What a jury does is what a jury does. So they can act however they want as long as they're not discriminatory, but we don't know what happened in that situation. But it does cover everybody. This covers absolutely everybody. We all have a colour of our skin. We all have a nationality, we all have an ethnic origin, and we all have a national origin. All of those things are protected, and they are both protected in society and at work. Religion or belief, or lack thereof, or any religion or belief. So it doesn't need to be a religious belief. It can be a singly held belief, as long as it's not detrimental to other people. You can have any belief system you want, and it covers people who have a religious belief, but it also covers people who have no religious belief being treated differently because of the fact that they do not have a religious belief. So again, that covers absolutely everybody. Everybody either has a religious belief or doesn't have a religious belief, or is somewhere in between with that. So it covers absolutely everybody. Sex, everyone has sex, so therefore everybody's covered. So it doesn't just cover women. I think that's misconstrued quite a lot. It does not just cover women, and it depends very much on what I'm losing the word. What area of work you work in? So it's my brain's gone to try and work out what that word is that I'm trying to look for. So it's sector. It depends on what kind of sector you work in. But having worked in the charity sector for the most of my career, the majority of people who work in the charity sector are female. That I've actually had more male complaints and more male grievances that have been put in from a male in relation to sexism from a female than I have a female in the opposite way. And I think that's because of the dynamic, that there are more females there, therefore automatically that's going to happen. But they are treated exactly the same, and they should be treated exactly the same. And if they're not, you have been discriminated against, and therefore you can take that to a tribunal. So without having that in place, nobody would ever be able to say I've been mistreated because of my gender, regardless my sex, regardless of what sex that is. And then the last one is sexual orientation. And again, I think people feel like this just protects people who are homosexual. No, it doesn't. It protects anybody in relation to their sexual orientation. That includes straight people. And again, I've only had this once, but I have done an investigation where a gay person discriminated very clearly against a heterosexual person, and we found in favour of the person who had brought the complaint, who was heterosexual and felt that they had been discriminated against. Rightly so, because it was very much the case that they had been discriminated against because of their sexuality. So it covers everybody. So 6 out of 9 of these absolutely cover everybody, and disability covers a large amount of people, and so does maternity and paternity leave. So it's really important to understand that covers pretty much everybody, and if we take any of these away, it means having to take pretty much all of them away. We can't just pick and choose which ones we want. We have to look at how we're protecting everybody. And with that in mind, I'm kind of going to go into why it's important for each bit of these. So the first thing I'm going to look at is, why is it important in relation to diversity? Sorry, the editing may have just gone a bit weird then because of the fact that my camera just fell off. So so I'm just going to have a look at why it is important in relation to diversity. And I think it's important to sort of make the point that DEI is not about employing people from diverse backgrounds necessarily. It is about ensuring that people from any background are not given less advantage in the world based on whatever characteristic it is that may be consciously or unconsciously biased towards. And for assumptions to not be made based on those unconscious biases. Wanting a diverse workforce or society is not about making sure everyone is seen to be involved, but that we take the best bits of all cultures, backgrounds, and life experience, and make the workplace, or in fact viewpoints in general, better in the future. It is also obviously wanting to be a human and care for other human beings. Diversity is not about taking from one group of people while giving others more. It is about having a group of people who can see things from different viewpoints based on their lived experience, and making sure the best outcome for the business or society is achieved through unity. Ultimately, having a diverse workforce means that business will be more successful as they cater and adapt for a wider audience. So from a capitalist point of view, it makes way more sense. While from a social democratic perspective, it's the right thing to do. Diversity in workplaces should be seen as a win-win situation. Anyone that does not see it is often more focused on small features that should not matter, rather than the bigger picture of no one losing out. The recent pushback on DEI comes from a place of not liking that we are accountable for how we treat other people, which is something that I think historically we weren't necessarily held accountable for. So it means that often comes from people who have not faced any true discrimination in their life, and generally other than being told that it's not okay to make fun of people or treat people differently because of a characteristic you don't understand, and actively chose to continue to see as difference rather than focus on the humanity that we all share. And I think that's why there's problems there, because I think that's the way, and I'll get into a little bit briefly, because I don't want this to be a really, really long video, why that might be and why I personally think that's the case. So I'm now going to have a look at why equality is important. Equality is important because, as I mentioned in the section on diversity, all people should be treated equal. We are all humans first. Everything else is secondary, and it should always be seen that way. We are not evolved to naturally live in the world that we live in, where different people live together. So we do have to remind ourselves to do this, of the fact that is a problem. We are still tribal. Therefore, anything we see as difference or as different is unconsciously seen as bad. So, like I say, it's unconsciously. This, of course, is different for everyone based on our lived experience. I may unconsciously see a person who loves sport and drinking in a pub as different, and I have a natural defence in my head to say, stay away. I am wrong for thinking that. It is an unconscious bias. My point here is that if I grew up in a different environment where I was exposed to opinions regarding race or gender or sexuality being seen differently, I may feel differently about people that don't fit into what are my predetermined thoughts. I could be racist, I could be transphobic, I could be homophobic. I think there's a misunderstanding about phobia as well, because one of the things I keep hearing is I'm not scared of this person, I'm not scared of gay people, I'm not scared of trans people. Phobia doesn't actually mean fear of. It's more accurately it means that a repulsion towards, and is considered an unconscious reaction which requires a cognitive thought process to get past. I don't think that a person who watches sport while drinking in a pub should not be allowed to do so. Yet, if I use I'm just as intrinsically phobic of that, and therefore the thought is there for me that's not something that I want to be around. And by the logic of the people that are saying that means that people can't have equal rights, no matter what, then the logic of that person would dictate that I could say that person is not allowed to do that thing because it's something that I am not comfortable with, and that isn't how the world works. And I think it's ironic that me, of all people, is saying this is not how the world works when I'm confused by most social interactions. But it just isn't fair to do so. So I'm going to now look at why inclusion is important. So inclusion is important for the same reason diversity is important, and they're all as equally important as each other. The more we include people, the better we become as the human race. We are no longer tribal. We have huge measures in place to make sure that we are safer than we have ever been in this world. We need to move past our tribal past, but our brains are very much stuck in that tribal mode, which means it looks for difference. So the reason we need a policy to make sure we are inclusive is because our brains can unconsciously be exclusive by nature, even if we don't want to be. So policy keeps us on track. That's the reason why it's there. It keeps us all on track and it reminds us of the fact that maybe we are being unconsciously biased, and being aware of that. Being inclusive takes nothing away from anyone unless you are actively excluding people. And I just can't understand why you would want to do that. Why would you actively want to do it? It's bad enough when we do it unintentionally. If I'm unintentionally excluding of somebody, it makes me feel bad, and it should make people feel bad to want to be excluding of people in society. It just is not the way we should be working. And if we reverse the tables and it was on us, we wouldn't be happy about it. So what I'm going to look at this with is the next is equity, which kind of falls within part of DEI, but it's kind of an additional thing that comes on the back of it. So equity is when there is an identified marker as to someone not being naturally at the same starting point as others, and putting measures in place to help that person to get to an even playing field. Not ahead, but a starting point that ensures that people who are capable of doing a job are, if there are certain barriers, removed. So for instance, a younger person being trained for longer or in a different way and an older person being trained in a way that they have communicated will suit them. So a younger person might not be able to necessarily understand what would be the best way for them to be trained because they've not got the life experience to understand that. So trying different ways or putting a longer time period in place so that you can get that training correct. And an older person might be very stuck in their ways in the way that they want to be trained, and training somebody based on that and making adaptations to that. That's equity. That's ensuring that somebody's able to get to the same point. It doesn't put anybody further ahead. What it does is puts everybody at an even playing field, but looking at an individual person rather than saying everybody has to learn this way. What equity is not is making anyone better at their job than others. It is allowing everyone to have the same opportunity in life. So the last bit I'm going to look at is the problem with not having DEI policies, and this is not an exhaustive list whatsoever. Again, I wanted to make sure this video was kept as short as possible. I didn't want it to be really, really, really long. So the problem with not having DEI policies, unconscious bias can lead to bad decision making, which means limited knowledge and stunted growth potential. And that's the thing. I think it's misunderstood that if we had really, really narrow groups of people working for a company, then we wouldn't necessarily change how that company works. I think it's more than this, but I'm trying to look at it from an economic perspective. Having a diverse workforce makes it a better organization. It's more likely to be sustainable. It's more likely to make more money, and it's more likely to continue being an employer. Echo chambers are created and the bigger picture not seen, and we can see that in quite a lot of older school sectors where then it's just old boards that have been there for a long time. And when I say old, I don't mean older people. I mean boards that have been there for a long time. That may indicate that they are older, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they have to be. It could just be old-fashioned thought process. It could be that everybody who's brought into that office thinks the same way, and therefore you're not getting that diverse group of people because of the fact that you have to think a certain way to be in that boardroom, which then means that we lose big corporations, as we seem to be doing quite often, when there makes no sense to it. Wilco's is a perfect example. I can't understand how Wilco's ended up going bust. It went bust because of poor management. It went bust because of poor management because of the fact that the people in that board weren't listening to the wider team. Corruption is much more easier within organisations. Narrower groups of people in relation to background and thought process are more likely to become corrupt. Just naturally, it's not meant to be done on purpose. Doesn't make those people bad people. It's just a natural thought process. People who are like-minded are way more likely to be corrupt, just intrinsically, without meaning to. And it's because of the fact that they were okay doing certain things because their thought processes are all the same. They're not questioned. New ideas are stunted, kind of falls in the same bracket there. And then this was a big one for me. So obviously much of society will be isolated from the workplace, and this leads to disenfranchisement of people. At society level, this naturally leads to disorder, higher crime rates, violence, health issues, and even worse, potential game-ending situations that are happening for people. And I think it's that's then leading to higher levels of people who are on benefits, which, whether that's disability benefit or it is just out of work benefits, that you're going to end up with more people in those situations, and you're creating more people that have to sign on to have benefits, when in fact you didn't need to get to that point with most of those people. And the disenfranchisement is not something that I think we can underestimate. The more you disenfranchise people, the more likely they are not going to want to return to the workplace, and when they do return to the workplace, it'd be a negative experience for them. It makes poverty a bigger issue, and less people are employed, like I've just said. So, but yet poverty becomes a major problem, and then that leads to all of the other things that I was saying about previously. It allows for further division to be made in society, and I think we're seeing a lot more of that now, that there is a lot of division between people. It is the whole point of this is a self-fulfilling prophecy. The more that you narrow your thought process, the more likely you are to not employ people of different backgrounds to you, and therefore you are making it so that your company is more likely to go bust, which will lead to more unemployment, and companies going bust, less taxes paid by those businesses, because no taxes paid by those businesses that go bust, and it's just a cyclical issue. And you are then doing the same when it comes to things like crime and that type of thing. And the more disenfranchised a group of people become, and if they then start being in a situation where maybe the crime rate seems to be going up in relation to that characteristic, then they feel more disenfranchised, and then the cycle continues. And also they're less likely to be employed, more unconscious bias is created, and we never get out of that vicious circle. So that's my take on this, and I think this is, for me, this is a really important thing, that we make sure in this country we really do not get to a point where we take DEI out of the equation, because it is really, really important to be there. It's about keeping people in employment. It's about making sure that everybody is given opportunity, and that we have a more caring and more inclusive society in general. And I really, really do not want to see us go the way that America has gone in relation to DEI in the UK, because it's one of the most problematic and scary things that I think I've seen, and there's been many of them in relation to what's happening in America at the moment. And this was one that really concerned me, so this is why I felt like I really had to do a video about it. So thank you very much for watching this. I'd love to hear your comments on it. I'd love to hear if you'd like to hear more of these kind of videos rather than it being me sort of talking about traits. I will always do that, talking about symptoms of conditions, talking about autism in relation to how things are. If you'd like to hear more about these kind of things and where I see things in relation to society and politics and that type of thing, I will never go too deeply into it on this channel, but if you want me to sort of look at the society a little bit more, quite happy to do that. And I'd like to. I think it would change it up a little bit for me as well. So if you, like I say, drop a comment if you want to. Obviously, if you could like, share and subscribe, that would be perfect. Anything that will help the algorithm is brilliant, but don't worry too much about it. Thank you very much, and I hope to see you on the next video. Thanks. Bye.